the long history of the National Football League, many teams have come into the organization. In 1961, the Minnesota Vikings were established in the National Football Conference, being added to a busy NFC North division. The Green Bay Packers, Chicago Bears, and Detroit Lions also made up this section of the league, being tasked to face one another twice a year. Donning a striking purple, the Vikings started to generate some buzz throughout Minnesota. Making some impressive leaps throughout the 1960s, the team reached a Super Bowl in 1969. The Vikings created a new nickname for their dominating defense, the Purple People Eaters, in the early 1970s. The team would crush and tear down others very quickly and thoroughly. The Vikings entered the Super Bowl 3 times in 4 years, only to result in losses every time. The constant success started to dwindle by the end of the decade, leading to a rapid decline in the 1980s. Throughout this period, many notable names included quarterback Fran Tarkenton, defensive tackle Alan Page, defensive end Carl Eller, running back Chuck Foreman, and offensive tackle Ron Yari. Running into the 1990s, the team started a turnaround, with a good portion of every year having a positive record. Drafting players like Randy Moss added to their success, as well as a 15-1 record in 1998. Stadiums filled in anticipation of what Randy was able to bring to the table, along with star quarterback Randall Cunningham. This was during the impressive reigns of the San Francisco 49ers, Dallas Cowboys, and Denver Broncos, however, leading to these Viking teams never heading to the Super Bowl. In the 2000s, besides Adrian Peterson, there was not much to mention for Minnesota. The team squandered a lot of Peterson's capabilities, leading to him never being the same player after the fact. Despite this, in 2009, the team had an impressive 12-4 record and was in front of everyone else in the NFC. After steamrolling the Dallas Cowboys, the team would lose to the New Orleans Saints, who would go on to win the Super Bowl that year against the Indianapolis Colts. Heading into the 2010s, the Vikings fell off the playoff window a couple more times until their 2015 season under Mike Zimmer. The team's success in this 11-5 season was mostly made by Adrian Peterson and specialist Cordero Patterson. In the draft, the Vikings were able to get stars in linebacker Eric Kendricks, defensive end Danielle Hunter, and wide receiver Stephon Diggs. Quarterback Teddy Bridgewater maintained the season well, throwing for over 3,000 yards in a surprisingly healthy season. Besides some field goals, the Vikings fell to the Seahawks in the wild card round of the playoffs with a score of 10-9. Despite having a decent start at 5 wins, no losses, the Vikings fell apart with injuries. During practice before the season started, Bridgewater got injured, and a few weeks after that incident, Adrian Peterson also struggled with career-altering injuries in his legs. The one bright spot was the receiving core becoming very good, with wide receiver Adam Thielen getting a more prominent role, along with Stephon Diggs developing even better in year 2. Due to Bridgewater's injury, he was replaced by Case Keenum as the starting quarterback in 2017. The Vikings saw Adrian Peterson leave in free agency, having a major gap in the running back spot. To adjust, they drafted running back Dalvin Cook in the second round of the draft. The team had time to adapt to these new changes, gaining an impressive 13-3 record as a result. Overall, the Vikings headed into the playoffs as an imposing threat to whoever they faced. On this occasion in the playoffs, the Vikings faced a team that was very destructive. The New Orleans Saints were introduced into the National Football League in 1966, being added to the NFC West division, later being moved to the NFC South. When in the West, the Saints were forced into facing the Los Angeles Rams, Atlanta Falcons, San Francisco 49ers, and Carolina Panthers. There was plenty of struggle in the first 20 years of the Saints in the NFL, having no real success until the late 1980s. The Saints had some struggles in the playoffs too, losing every single attempt they were given. Heading into the new century, the Saints finally got their first playoff win against the St. Louis Rams. They didn't get any further for a while until an interesting 2006 offseason led to a franchise-changing move. San Diego Chargers quarterback Drew Brees was seen as questionable after injuries tore up his throwing shoulder, causing the Chargers to draft a replacement with Phillip Rivers in 2004. The Chargers were seeing Rivers as the answer and wanted Brees gone. The Saints, 5 years out from their last playoff appearance, signed Brees. Along with drafting running back Reggie Bush in the 2006 draft, the Saints looked completely different. They soared to a 10-6 record, reaching the playoffs. After crushing the Eagles in the divisional round, the Saints lost to the Super Bowl losing Chicago Bears. New Orleans didn't draft that well in 2007 or in 2008, with each season resulting in a middle-of-the-pack result. The Saints came back in 2009 on a mission, having a 13-3 record. They went by the Arizona Cardinals, brushed past the Vikings, and took down the Indianapolis Colts to win Super Bowl 44. The Saints would continue to enter the playoffs in the 2010s, winning 2 of 5 playoff games. New Orleans also had several middle-of-the-pack years leading into 2017. In the draft, the Saints gained some notable players. Defensive end Cameron Jordan, defensive tackle Akeem Hicks, offensive tackle Terron Armstead, wide receiver Brandon Cooks, who would leave before 2017 started, wide receiver Mike Thomas, safety Von Bell, cornerback Marshawn Lattimore, offensive tackle Ryan Ramczyk, running back Alvin Kamara, linebacker Alex Anzalone, and defensive end Trey Hendrickson. New Orleans became a star-studded team, crushing others with insane precision. The competition in 2017 was very strong, leading to an 11-5 record. Throughout the span of playoff struggle, Drew Brees became one of the greatest quarterbacks ever, throwing for around or over 5,000 yards every season since his Super Bowl win. Drew Brees also threw for 286 touchdowns in this span. More and more records fell into Brees' legacy, including leading the league in passer rating. The Saints faced the Panthers in the wild card round, with the team's offensive output looking crazy. Brees threw for 376 yards, 2 touchdowns, and an interception. Alvin Kamara rushed for just 23 yards and a touchdown, while Mike Thomas had 8 catches for 131 yards. The final score was 31-26, but the Panthers gained some last-second points in the final quarter. The win resulted with the Saints running into the Vikings in the divisional round, their first playoff encounter since 2009's Super Bowl win. In the divisional round, the Vikings and Saints faced off to see who would advance into the NFC Conference Championship. The Vikings came in as the favorites by almost a touchdown. The game itself was mostly controlled by the Vikings in the first half, putting up a dominant 17-0 lead, featuring scoring plays from the run game. Jerick McKinnon and Latavius Murray ran it in for 2 separate touchdowns, along with kicker Kai Forbath firing a short field goal with ease. All the Saints could do was miss a field goal from kicker Will Lutz from nearly 60 yards out. Knowing they needed a change in game strategy, the Saints improved in the second half. They also used the clock to their advantage, using almost 7 minutes of the game time to score a passing touchdown to Michael Thomas. The Vikings squandered their drives in the third quarter, leading to a messy fourth. The Vikings' Case Keenum had a terrible interception, leading to Michael Thomas gaining another touchdown for the Saints. After that, the Vikings became more desperate, using 3 minutes to kick a field goal. After another 2 minutes in a drive, the Saints gained the lead with 3 minutes left in the game, with Alvin Kamara catching and running into the end zone for another touchdown. After that, both teams' defenses lost steam, leading to a pair of long field goals for each. Will Lutz landed a 43-yarder and Kai Forbath landed a 53-yarder. Down by 1 point, the Vikings prayed and prayed to win this nail-biter. 25 seconds left, an electric Minneapolis crowd, and 4 amazing plays. Well, more like two amazing plays. The first play in this drive was after a false start penalty, a huge 19-yard throw to Stefon Diggs to land them closer to midfield. The Vikings hastily called their last timeout with 18 seconds left. Keenum threw into the distance, but the receiver he aimed for didn't catch it. The Saints called another timeout, only for Keenum to throw again on the next play, another incompletion. Now on 3rd and 10 at an awkward distance, something breathtaking, era-defining, something that could change the future of both of these teams became real. Being given 14 seconds, Keenum had no choice but to do a Hail Mary, sailing the ball through the air in an act of pure desperation. As the ball streamed through the air, the crowd became more and more hyped. After traveling over 60 yards in the air, Stefon Diggs caught the ball and went into the end zone. The Saints had to look down in defeat 9 years after defeating the Vikings to make the Super Bowl. Unfortunately for the Vikings, they lost in the conference championship to that year's Super Bowl champions, the Philadelphia Eagles. The Saints returned to the playoffs the year after, winning against the Eagles, and later losing to the Los Angeles Rams in controversial fashion. In 2020, Drew Brees was able to face legendary quarterback Tom Brady in an interdivisional rivalry with the Buccaneers. After cracking his ribs beyond repair, Drew Brees retired. The Saints, as of 2024, are still looking for a new franchise quarterback. The draft has been pretty decent with the Saints, drafting wide receiver Chris Olave in 2022, along with offensive tackle Talisi Fuaga and cornerback Kool-Aid McKinstry in 2024. Wide receiver Mike Thomas was pushed out the door in 2024 as well. The Vikings had some interesting transactions soon after their playoff loss to the Eagles in 2017. Quarterback Kirk Cousins joined the team in the offseason, along with defensive tackle Sheldon Richardson. The Vikings were put in the middle of the pack, not reaching the playoffs in 2018. In 2019, running back Alexander Mattison was drafted by the Vikings, and Teddy Bridgewater left the team. This team was pretty decent, getting to the divisional round before losing to the Super Bowl runner-ups San Francisco 49ers team. The 2020 season was rough, with the team trading Stefon Diggs to the Bills for pretty much their entire draft class. This worked out though, as they drafted wide receiver Justin Jefferson. They also tried to draft another receiver with KJ Osborne, but he never grew into a better player. The team fell below the playoff mark, doing fairly better in 2021. The Vikings notably drafted offensive tackle Christian Darrisaw and saw a remarkable amount of improvement from Justin Jefferson. The Vikings looked completely different from that Miracle team, with Kirk Cousins taking up Case Keenum's spot at quarterback. Along with Jefferson replacing Diggs soon after, the two notable parts of this moment were gone from the team. The only remaining pieces of this team were Dalvin Cook, who would be released in 2023, along with Danielle Hunter, who would only last another season before signing with the Houston Texans. Minnesota added renowned tight end TJ Hawkinson halfway through the 2023 campaign and signed him into a massive extension. However, Cousins was swayed away in 2024, leading to the team needing yet another quarterback. In that year's draft, they added J.J. McCarthy from Michigan. There has been no replacement for Danielle Hunter or Dalvin Cook, leaving their defense and run game somewhat terrible. Now that Jefferson has a contract extension, the Vikings are looking to start yet another new era. Overall, the Minnesota Vikings had a long road to reach the Minneapolis Miracle, with plenty of struggle to happen between them and the New Orleans Saints after the fact. The Vikings avenged their prior playoff loss in this game with one of the most impressive moments ever seen by an NFL crowd. The ever-evolving landscape of the Vikings helps them consistently stay in the middle of the pack. The Minneapolis Miracle will always be a play to look back on, and for good reasons. There will always be a potential moment that replaces it, but we will never see another play like this one, with these players or with these teams.